Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. You can find me on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. Spelling GaelenTrombley. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Welcome to 194 of the Galen Trombley Show. My guest today is Katie Calkins. She is the co-owner and speech-language pathologist at Adirondack Helping Hands. She's also a clinical supervisor at SUNY Plattsburgh in the speech and hearing department. Katie, I get that correct?
You got it all correct.
All right,
you
perfect.
did.
So, Katie, welcome. And
Thank you.
People that do not know you, because this is Katie's debut on a podcast, we were just discussing, listens to the podcast, has not been a guest on the podcast, so we're getting her started on that today. This is your maybe your traveling podcast circuit now. You get on, you just start like reaching out and getting on. This is the start of big things here. So, Katie, for people that do not know you, give us background, who you are, where you came from, how'd you get to 2022, Katie Calkins.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot. How am I going to put this all together? Let's see here. So I'm originally from Vermont. That's fun, right?
Yes, I think it's great. Yes.
I'm from Vermont. I got my degree in elementary education.
Okay.
I taught for 1 year in Ocean City, Maryland. Absolutely hated it. I hated it and I sucked at it.
This was childhood education.
Early childhood.
Okay.
I was awful at it. It was unfortunate that I got all the way through my degree and
it wasn't that you didn't like kids. It was
loved kids.
It was the topic stuff.
I could not. I have to tell you, I know there's a lot out there about teachers, but it's really hard to be one.
Yeah.
So here was my deal. There was a group of kids that struggled. There was a group of kids that was like right in the middle, and then there was a group of kids that were academically much more strong. I could not figure out how to teach everybody in one day. I just couldn't do it. Like I wanted some kids to come from like 8 to 10, and then like the next group, could you come from 10 to noon? No, it was terrible. I didn't like it, and I constantly criticized myself about it. So then I moved back to Plattsburgh because I was dating a boy that my sister didn't like. And she said, if you come back and go to grad school, then I will, you can live here for free. So I did. So I came back to Plattsburgh State. I got into speech, absolutely loved it, was moving the second I got done because I was like, yeah, this was fun, but I'm not living in Plattsburgh. And now I've been married for almost 20 years and I have 4 kids here.
So first off, when you were, how did you, so the guy your sister didn't like, is that her current husband? That's not, right? Okay. I didn't know if you were like this, that just kind of worked out. I was like, oh, poor Mr. Calkins. But
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So how did you end up in Plattsburgh though? Like you went down to Ocean City, Maryland. They came up to Plattsburgh. Were you already in Plattsburgh, or were you go straight from Vermont to Maryland to Plattsburgh?
Yep, I went Vermont, Maryland, Plattsburgh because my sister lived here.
Okay.
And she taught here, and she was raising her family here, and she actually had Brady.
Okay.
You know him.
Podcast guest.
Yep, podcast
alumni.
guest. Yep, alumni Brady. Yep. And he was like my first nephew, and I just fell in love with him. So it was pretty easy bait to get me back here, like really easy. And then, I went to grad school here, and as much as I adored him, I was like, I am not staying here. I do not like this place.
And you stayed?
I stayed.
So what was your first gig when you got here? That kept you kept you staying here? Like you graduated,
Yep,
right?
I graduated. Well, because I met my now husband.
Okay.
Yep, I was on a date with somebody else, and then he was bartending at Woodstock's.
Nice.
Yep, and I gave him a great line. Yep, he gave me his phone number, and I said, I don't call boys, they call me. He still picks on me about that to this day.
Did you try to get the number and then you dropped the line, or that was the line?
No, that was the line I gave him when he, he gave me his phone number, and that was, I'm getting embarrassed thinking about it. What a dumb,
so
like,
he gave
who
you the
says
phone
that?
number, then you said the line,
Yeah.
and then he, gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you like got the number, then said the line, and then it was like, but you asked for the number, so gotcha.
No, he gave me his phone number, yeah. But who says that though, Galen? Like, really, who says that? Nobody. Yeah, but nobody actually says that.
I feel like that they say it in movies. So I think it's like a very scripted line in movies. You know when you watch a movie and it's too perfect, the script, the way things flow, where like a comeback or a situation, right. Or my favorite is like when someone, it might be like an action movie, or it could be, or even like a romance comedy where they do something and they say something so definitive that they're like, oh my God, that better work out. And then it works out perfectly because it's a movie. Right. But I'm like, if I would have said that, it would have fallen flat and it wouldn't have been a good comeback or a good like strategy. Like, I don't know, but that sounds like something that you were like living out a movie, but it like worked perfect, like the cameras run. Where it could have easily been like, who was this chick at or at Woodstock sitting at the bar? So, but it worked out great. So
it did. Yes, it absolutely did.
so when you went to actually childhood education, did you have a degree in childhood education?
In elementary ed.
Or elementary ed.
Yep.
And then you ended up going into the speech as more of a specialized.
Yes.
So why that transition?
So after I taught for a year, I just realized like, okay, there's pieces of this that I love, but let's be honest, I don't think that I'm ever going to be awesome at this. Like I knew enough to know like, okay, I got to figure something out. Mm-hmm. So then I was thinking about nursing or speech, which is funny, right? Because those seem like two totally different things. But so speech and education and nursing kind of like all sort of meld because speech has a lot of neuroanatomy and anatomy physiology. So I like all that kind of stuff. So I got to learn about that. And you can work at a hospital as a speech pathologist. So
so my daughter right now is going through speech. Is we all going through speech? Is that the correct term? Like going with the speech pathologist? I don't know. So, but what I found was, couple things. She holds her words out. So she almost sounds like one of those like California girls. She'll be like, yeah. Like she'll hold this like long tone out, but she doesn't. And then the other thing was she wasn't very, she would like trip and stumble a lot. So she was kind of uncoordinated and like walking. She would like walk and bump into things or trip. And we were told that there is like a neurological connection between speech and also movement. With the speech pattern, with her holding out her words or not finishing her sentences, like we can make it out and it's getting better. But my son, like he could have a full-on conversation with an adult and you would know every single word he said. My daughter's like, what did she say? Like me and my wife know what she's saying, but even sometimes we're like, what? And she'll say it and she'll say it and she'll say it. And we're like, oh, gotcha. But it like doesn't sound, the sound doesn't come out like it's supposed to.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you say neurological, like what's the connection between everything with speech, with movement, with motor patterns?
Well, everything really relies in your brain, basically. And so there's reflexes that you're born with that automatically, some reflexes are done after a certain period of time. Some need some time to mature and develop. Some reflexes, which it sounds like what got picked up on your daughter's evaluation, is that you literally have to train your brain how to make certain things work or not. So kids that we would expect, just for example, like because this is just really easy. If a child trips and falls, you would expect for them to put their hands out. That's a reflex to put your hands out to catch yourself. Well, some kids don't have that reflex and they literally have to be taught to do that because for whatever reason, sometimes it can be environmental when the baby was growing in their mom. And sometimes things just happen. We don't know why. But lucky enough, we have lots of really phenomenal therapists that live in the North Country, which is awesome, and that totally get this and understand this. It can help kiddos so that it doesn't become an ongoing issue.
So what's one of the things you find the most with children, like with speech
right now?
Just in general? Yeah, like what would be some major like categories? Like this is stuff we deal with a lot with children.
So I would say the hot topics right now are speech sound disorders. COVID did not help at all.
And what do you mean by speech sound disorder?
So if you have a child that say they're supposed to be, instead of saying an F, so instead of for, they say pour, or instead of saying snake, they say nake. So that would be a speech sound disorder. For whatever reason, they're doing something to the sounds that shouldn't be happening. That's really prevalent right now.
but they hear it in their brain as like snake. When you say Nate, they're thinking in the head that's snake.
Yes.
Like I can
Yes.
hear mom and dad are saying snake. I'm saying snake, but it's coming out as Nate.
Yes.
And they can't make that connection.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly it. So then speech pathologists are trained to know that, like, okay, this is what they're hearing. This is what they think they're saying, but this is what they're actually saying. So then there's a certain protocol kind of that you use to teach them. It's called minimal pairs. I don't know if you're
Well, no, I don't know that. But if
interested in that.
Like, is there
Sorry.
is there a lot of correlation though? Like you said, like snake and Nate, like S and N. Are there certain letters that just are very common? Of like, okay, if you say the F, it's gonna go with a P, or it's gonna go with a certain letter.
Yeah, there's when kids make different sounds for sounds, we're expecting them as a speech pathologist. There's certain things that I'm expecting a child to do. So what I would expect for a kiddo, just for example, instead of saying vacuum, I would expect them sometimes to use a B for a V. I would not expect them to use a T for a V though. So those are things that we're trained on to understand what's atypical and what's normal but still needs to be corrected.
So there's a pretty direct correlation between different letters and different sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
it's not like randomized where someone's gonna say a Y and it's like why, but it's a B.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes that does happen, and then our job becomes really challenging because there's certain, you don't treat every speech sound disorder the same. It's not black and white. It's not like I can't just go to every single child who's struggling with sound development and approach it the same way. You really have to analyze it. It's pretty nerdy, actually, at the end of the day.
So I'm guessing over time so how long have you been doing this now?
So I've been in SLP for 18 years.
So over the 18 years, I'm assuming that a lot of those, like random, I was going to call them random, but things that aren't, common, or let's say uncommon,
Mm-hmm.
you probably have started to see a few of those over and over again where there's not common, but you have seen a couple times in your career where you're like, okay, I remember this kid had that connection 10 years ago. And then it kind of goes in your bag of tricks of like things you can identify very quickly now.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. In fact, obviously the more you do something, the more comfortable you become, but also because of things like podcasts, you had asked me if I listened to many, and actually, yes, I do listen to a ton of speech podcasts. Mm-hmm. That was not available 18 years ago. That wasn't there. And so now I can listen to other professionals and they'll be saying, this, and this is happening, and this is how I treated it, or they'll have a question and answer thing, and it's really helpful. And it's nice because our field continues to develop. I love it because we have to have a certain amount of continuing education every year, and I really like that piece of it because you just can't stay stagnant in my field, and I imagine yours is the same as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's like I got like a success habit. Like you have to be learning every day, even
Yes.
if your industry is like kind of stale.
Yeah.
You can still learn stuff that could evolve your industry, or things that maybe aren't direct but are like kind of a byproduct that.
Yes.
So I find that I work real estate for them. Like when I look at like our job for real estate, like the act of buying and selling homes and contracts and everything else is very simple. Like that's not that hard. Like that hasn't changed in many years. But then it's like the little, like the nuances, the trends, which are real estate, but they're really more economically dependent. That kind of like real estate either goes up or down. Like there's
Right.
not a whole lot of like, you can't really think of a lot of changes, but then it's really looking at the external factors and how all that kind of works together, and then kind of see how like the whole tangle web of where we are in the world reacts to what we're going to see, and how we can, kind of forecast it. So that's where I'm looking at, which is probably like you, like looking at trends that are up and coming, and I think, and again, like you said, like when I asked you the question, like, well, what's popular now? Because I'm sure there's some stuff that's probably fallen out too of practice. Or is most of it, once it gets in there, then it kind of just doesn't really lose like the substance of the English language, because the English language has evolved.
Yes, true.
So I don't know if that affects
So
kids.
I think it depends on what, where you're a speech language pathologist, because if you're an SLP in a school, the SLP's job now has become just enormous. I don't even know how they do it. Really, truly, there's just so much that's put on their plate, especially because as the academics become more difficult, more ends up falling on the SLP, because within our scope of practice is teaching children vocabulary and understanding when your teacher says something, being able to process what you hear verbally and then applying that to whatever they're asking you to do. So that falls on a speech pathologist as well, on top of all of the other things that we would do.
So when you go in the school and classrooms, are you with kids kind of one-on-one separate from everything?
I am, because I do birth to 5. Wow. So I'm early intervention in preschool, which I just don't understand why everybody doesn't do that, because, okay, so you have young kids, mm-hmm. right? So how old are they?
4, 3, and 1.
Oh, you have 3?
I'm going to say 1. Yes, I have 3
kids.
You're
going to say 1?
You know when people do ages?
Yeah, like 8 months. And
like, technically, 7... He would be going on 17 months.
Okay.
But like in my head, I'm like, he's 1.
He's just 1. Yeah.
He's all 1 in months. I mean, I hate doing the math at that point. Because I'm like, he's 1. He turned 1 and he had his first birthday.
I love it.
So 4, 3, and 1.
Okay. So you had your kids back to back to back too.
Yeah.
It's pretty nuts, huh?
Yeah. Someone was talking to me about it with kids, and I said, who was it? Oh, yeah, someone stopped in earlier was talking about kids, and it basically just like, it just keeps you tired. Like, I don't like it's. I mean,
That's
you have all your kids are together.
That's
like,
a
I don't.
Great way to put
they're
it.
great. It's just like you're constantly just like trying to stay awake and trying to be like.
Yeah, but you're in the weeds right now. You are in the weeds, Galen.
I know, like when I look at people and I'm like, okay, Katie's like vibrant. She's got kids, but she's out. She's doing stuff. I can see. I got a pathway. A couple like your youngest is 11. Like I got 10 years.
You're
I can
going
get to
get there.
Yeah.
Yes, and then your worries become totally different too.
Yeah. So without getting too much on the kid thing, I've talked about friends with like, now we're busy at home. We're not busy out, but like the busies are just different. So
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So it would
100%.
take us out, but then I'm like, maybe that's not a bad thing because we'll see other adults. Like this is like,
right.
There's
there
kind
we
of a
go.
benefit, you know, like this, it'd be good. We could see some friends that have kids. And, but so when you talk about, so again, when you said everybody should go through it. So what's the purpose of that? Like every kid, meaning every kid should see some type of speech pathologist early on. Is that just to increase development, or is that to?
Oh wait, what? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, maybe I misheard you. So when you said something about every kid should do.
Oh, I think what I meant to say was I don't understand why everyone doesn't work in birth to 5, because it is.
Okay.
It is truly, it's so much fun. It's so dynamic. It changes all the time. If I have 7 sessions in one day, none of them are the same. Like every single one of them is different, and not to mention, kids are just funny. Like they're super, super funny.
They're silly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a blast.
They try to make, like, they know what they're doing too, so they try to make you laugh, and
Yes.
it's like, and they try to be goofy, and it's like,
Yes.
okay. And but so the young age, do you think does every kid need some level of speech pathology, or is it there's some kids that are just like, nah, they're good, like they're gonna just develop kind of naturally on their own without any exterior like intervention on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I had it my way, yeah, I would love it, just because what we provide at that age is it's truly just so beneficial. But a lot of what we do is what you do at home anyway. So when you're reading to your kids, when you're sitting down and playing with your kids, when you're just simple things like, hey, can you go get me the blank and bring it to blank? Just all those little things are helping to just train them, to help them when they get to school to be able to be as successful as possible. So a lot of it, I'm dumbing it down and making it seem like it's so simple.
No, please dumb me it down. I guess I work in layman's terms. I'm very good at that. Yes.
But a lot of what we do though is it's about relationship, and I'm sure you can relate it too to selling homes, because when you're talking about things don't change, the market's either up or it's down. But there's things that you do internally and what you do within your own company that make you as successful as you are. And that's how I think about speech. Speech is just, it's very relationship based. And when you really hone in on that, I think that's when you become successful as a therapist.
So like, I think people that are successful this is something I don't know whether I try to read a lot. So I try to like bring in knowledge and stuff and sift through it. But one of the things I gathered the other day was that when you start out, everything is very basic, and this is any field. So like speech pathology, real estate, or whatever field that you're in, is everything starts out super, super basic because you're learning the basics.
Right.
And then what happens is at a certain point in time, those basics keep building and building and building, and then you have a ton of stuff to do. And then it just seems, and you know a lot, but you do a lot, and it's all over the place. And I find that the really successful people, because I'm kind of in this realm right now where things get built up, and then got chaotic. And this is not just, this is life, because as like I said, I got 3 kids, 4 and under, so that added to it. But the idea is that when things went from very simplistic years ago to crazy, I think the really successful people can take the craziness and simplify it back down to the basics. And that's what I'm trying to work on. So it kind of sounds like you're doing that, where if you're going to meet with, a student or a child, that you have so much filtering that like you process the information very quickly. However that works. Like a lot of it's just, you probably can't explain it. I'm sure it's like gut, like I don't know, I just feel it. But you process it so quickly, and then you can find the correct answer very quickly. So it's almost like you're the human computer of a speech pathologist but it's probably because you've simplified and connected all the dots, where it's like problem A happens, it really is going to be a solution B or whatever. Right. And it kind of is, I find that's my business. I can problem solve a lot because I can simplify it down to only a couple outcomes. Right. Is that similar in speech pathology?
I think so, definitely. I mean, there's 2 parts to my job. One, I'm a speech therapist, and then I also own a business. And so that brings its own challenges within itself. And so trying to learn how to be a better manager, supervisor, boss, all of that kind of stuff, but then also learning my craft, which is what I love. So that the speech pathology piece, learning more, is really easy. The other piece is more challenging.
So is the speech pathology come easier to you now than running the business?
Gosh, 1,000 times because of continuing education, because it's just something I truly enjoy. It's so much fun. I don't see it as a job. My husband says to me all the time, he's like, "You're so lucky that you love to go to work." And I truly do love to go to work. I don't know how to explain it. I just love it so much.
Now, how long have you been doing? So the speech part's been 18 years. How long have you been doing the business side of all? Is it the same amount of time?
Wait, Galen. No, I've been in SLP for 20 years.
Okay.
We've owned the business for 18. We've had the business for 18
years. Oh, so it's overlapped for the majority of your career. Yes. Okay. Yep. Do you find that you're more in the speech pathology or more in the business day to day?
So I am blessed with a wonderful co-business partner who we just, without saying anything, we just jive. So she really enjoys a lot of the in-house stuff. So she likes to do, the insurances, and I don't know if she likes it, but she takes over that piece, which allows me to continue providing services. Yep. So I do half and half. Okay. So I provide services until about noon every day, and then I can go to the office in the afternoon. So that's really nice for me, right? Because I get the best of both. So you do have the structure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So what do you find changes the most in their day to day between the two? Like you said, each kid's different. So I'm guessing, I think we're very similar in different regards, but is most stuff is there a lot of structure in the day, or is it kind of like themed out, meaning, you go and do the services in the morning and then kind of the in-house stuff in the afternoon. So those are like your 2 big chunks or themes of the day, and then internally, and that's kind of like all over the place.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that absolutely sums it up perfectly. Yes, that is absolutely exactly how my day is. Yep.
So how do you? What's your best keys for like managing everything and trying to, whether it's getting everything in or prioritizing or learning and doing and putting, I'm guessing you get hit every day. Like your day starts with like a perfect plan, and then by the end of the day, you're like, "This is what it looked like. This is what it should have looked like. This is what it actually did look like."
Yeah, just a mess. Yeah. Just an absolute mess.
Yeah, every day is just like hang on and just ride the wave until I get home and eat dinner and chill. So, but like, how do you cope with managing all of that and try to keep everything still running when everything's changing and you have a lot of, I would say, a few hats that you have to wear each day?
That's a great question. It's challenging. Some days I'm definitely better at it than others. And I know this sounds so cliche, but obviously taking care of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like when I go in and out of like working out, but when I'm exercising frequently, my life is 1,010 times better. It just is. Everything is just better. I'm also, I'm a Christian, and when I'm very tuned into things like making sure that I'm reading the Bible every day and making sure that we're attending church and watching podcasts, all of that stuff actually helps ground me tremendously. When I lose touch with those two things, that's when I find things starting to get out of control. And it's easy to do, right? Because you start getting busy, so then you start making excuses. But the problem is when you take away those things that ground you, that's when things start to get really tough, I think.
Yeah, and I think that, like, as I was saying, things are chaotic, a couple things that I always go back to, because the first thing you compromise on is your time for yourself and like the stuff you want to do. And I think that's where I'm personally in that really weird scenario where you're like, you know it, but it's hard to commit to it because you've trained yourself for years, like not to do that, but you could get away with doing everything I was doing because I still had time to do that. And now that time's now sucked, then it's like I gotta now take from the other time, which used to just be like yes, and now I'm working on setting boundaries and parameters and kind of figuring out that. So when my my time and family time, that can be a little bit more just like flowing.
Yes.
And it's a struggle. Like, it's tough.
That's good. You sound like you have it figured out, though.
Well, I don't have it figured out.
You have a plan?
No, I think part of, like, with these, I think I said this before, like, the first step is admitting you have, like, a problem, or, like, kind of when they always say, like, the first step is, like, I just know that I just can't do everything. Like, I'm just aware of that. I'm not, like, naive and thinking, like, oh, no, I'm a superhero. I'm going to, like, take care of it. I'm like, no, I'm a human. Like, I only have so much output bandwidth in a day that I can extract before I'm just, like, completely just out. Like, I'm just useless. And it's trying to figure out how I can continue each day to just, like, get up and go to bed, but, like, not keep pulling from, like, the battery, kind of like let the battery recharge full in the morning. And I feel like I'm getting better in certain things, but then certain things it's like a lot of it's like a mental shift. Like, you just got to mentally be okay with it, and that's hard to do. And
that's so smart. See, that's awesome. That's really good. But you want to know what? Do you want to know what my other theory is?
Sure, I'd love it. Yes.
So I'll say ahead of time. I don't think this will offend anybody. But if it does, I'm apologizing ahead of time.
Okay, we're setting this up, so we might edit this out, folks.
Okay. So have you ever heard that men have brains like a waffle? So, like, envision a waffle in your head right now, and all the little
Belgian
square compartments.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
And there's like all the little square. Yep. Well, but an Eggo one is smaller though, so you might want to picture that because then your compartments are smaller. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so you see that, like, all the little squares, right? Women's brains are like spaghetti. So, like, now envision a pile of spaghetti on a plate. And it's like just everything is intertwined. Like, they're thinking about everything. There's nothing they're not thinking about. Whereas men's brains that are more like waffles, everything is in a compartment. So you think about one thing at a time. Now, you're a guy, so I don't know. Maybe this isn't true. But when that analogy was given to me years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, you just solved all my marriage problems, everything. That makes so much sense. So...
No, I'm thinking about this.
Trying to process it?
Yeah.
Because even with your response where you're saying that you're trying to set boundaries, you know that you're not superhuman. That was something I struggled with so much. I thought I could take everything on it. Actually, I can't.
So you think that everything just swirls around and you have a hard time just separating everything?
I have to work at it. Like, I have to literally say to myself, I'm not doing that right now. I'm pinning that up. I'm not thinking about that. This is what I'm focused on.
See, I think I fall in some of that. I feel maybe I have maybe I'm like a waffle brain topped with a little bit of spaghetti. Like, but I feel like I'd be like, what's the spiral spaghetti? The one that just seems like they're like they're doing like a twist. That maybe a pinwheel spaghetti. I don't know, one of those. But I think
that's so funny.
I do try to. So my wife says all the time of like you can only do one thing at once, like multitasking. Now, I also disagree that I don't think people can actually multitask.
It's been proven.
Yeah, like legitimately, you can't multitask.
No.
Like walking, like the adage of like walking and chewing gum is not multitasking. We're talking about multitasking of focus, and like you can only focus on one thing.
Yes,
that's why like texting and driving, you can't do both. Like you're kind of So
something's got to give.
Exactly, and so my wife will say that a lot of like you can't focus on two things. I'm like, no, I 100%. Like if I'm focused on doing something and it's not selective hearing, like she might say something to me, but I'm like so engrossed in what I'm doing that I'm like, wait, what? And she would say, we're not listening. I'm like, well, no, I'm not. It's not that I'm not listening. Like I literally didn't even, like I was so focused on whatever I'm doing that I think I'm able to really dive into something. If I get into something, I can get into it.
Right.
If I have no distractions, I can
It's
get
your
deep
compartment.
Yes.
It's your waffle brain.
So that, yes, I think I can, but I'd have to make the time because I think, meaning I have to, like you said, chalks, like I'm doing this, not doing this, doing this, not doing this. And I think my mind spins all the time, and which I think a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. But it's the idea that my thing is I have to set like really good, solid boundaries, and then I'm fine.
Right.
So like one of the examples I'm going to give is like, if you were to tell me, because this happened before, of like, actually I'll give you a very simplistic one. I had to bring my phone in to get a new phone. So when I got the new phone, which was fine, they said, hey, we got to sync all your stuff up to your new iPhone. I said, okay, great. So me being like, I've never done it before, I'm like, okay, is that something you guys can do? Like, yeah, we can do it for you if you want, or you can take it home and do it. And I'm like, no, I just trust you to do it, because I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
Now, this was 2 phones ago. So what happened was, the second time I was able to do it, it was actually quicker to do it at home because of the Wi-Fi, but whatever. So I didn't know this. So I give them my phone. I'm like, well, it's like 6:30 now. We won't have it before we're done closing. Do you mind if we keep it overnight, and then you come back in the morning and get it? And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's fine. Keep my phone. So what happened was I like walked out of the store, no phone, and I honestly felt very liberated. Like, because the thing is, your phone is like an extension of your arm, or you're like, it's basically a part of you now. But if you said, listen, you do not have your phone, my tendency or want to check it or reflex to check my phone is non-existent. It goes away.
Right.
So if I'm in like that extreme, it does not bother me. Where if you said, hey, put your phone like even in your pocket, I will check my phone.
Right.
But if you said put your phone in your pocket on airplane mode or off, I won't check my phone. It's just very like I'm as simple as that. Like if you put that kind of like limit on it, then I'm good.
Right.
So I don't like. So I'm good at it, but then there's times where I think it's the guilt part. I'm like, well, if somebody, well, like, it's like I said, it's like in my business, like if someone calls or texts or emails, that I gotta like get back to them like in a specific time, and I'm getting better at not doing that. And I think that one of the things that I keep like hearing when I talk to people about it or read about it, hear people talk about it, it's basically like, yeah, you're going to piss some people off, but just be okay with it, because it's like your sanity. And so I find that I'm in that stage of like, I have to just be okay with like letting people down, not because I'm a bad person, but because I do have to put boundaries, and I do have to like take control of certain things, but it's not how I was wired for well over a decade. So that's why it's difficult, because it's like retraining my brain to think, and it's not natural.
Well, we're so accessible. Our society really values that accessibility. You know, if somebody texts or if somebody emails, people are looking for an immediate response. And if you don't, then it carries that stigma of this, you don't care, you're ignoring me, whatever, which I think is terrible in society that we're doing that. So as a business owner, I think it's awesome that you set that boundaries, because then you're also setting it for your staff as well. And just saying, listen, when you're here and you're working, yeah, let's do this, but you also have a life outside of this, and you'll be better for me if you can do that. But it's hard. It's hard to do.
Yeah, no, it is. But it's weird, because I think I enforce it more with the staff than I actually do
funny?
myself, because I tell them to do it.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm getting better, but I like the staff all the time. I'm like, if you feel like it's a beautiful day out and it's like if you know it's going to be a beautiful day out and it's a Thursday afternoon, and it's going to be, because again, we live in the North Country. We only get, the day I'm talking about. Those sunny, like I just want to be outside.
The one that happens once a year.
Yeah, like you get them. Like I would say in the summer they happen every couple weeks. You get that just one really nice day.
Right.
So I'm like, if you know the day's coming, just plan that like, hey, I'm probably just going to check out early on a Thursday and go enjoy the nice day. And I'm all for it. I'm going to go do it. Like I will, there's times I've just completely punted stuff, because I'm like, we just have a really nice day. Right. And I just we shouldn't be inside working or on computers. Like, I don't care what it is. If you want to go get drinks with friends, if you want to just go for a walk, if you want to just go home early and hang out and sit in your backyard and read a book, I don't just go enjoy the sun.
Right.
But I think we need that. We need that because, I mean, you said 20 years you've been doing speech pathology. Like 20 years ago, you could probably just check out at whatever time your day ended and not come. And nobody would bother you. But now it's like if a parent for one of your kids could text you at 6:30 at night, and all of a sudden now you feel you got to text them back. Where 10, 15, 20 years ago, you would have maybe gotten something the next morning. Call me on my like at work when you get to like. So you just had the boundaries. We don't have that anymore. So I think we have to almost like. We let work creep into personal time. We can let personal time creep into work time.
Right.
There has to be because
it's got to be a balance.
Yeah. And and there's got to be an overlap. Like the Venn diagram idea. Like there's gonna be some interlude where it's like both sides are just like, there's a little bit of, and I think it's good and I like it because it keeps things. It's just not as like direct, like work home. Right. I don't think anybody really lives like that unless you're maybe like a CO or a nurse or someone that like has like can't use your phone, can't really like you're very structured to wherever you are.
Right.
So I don't know. Has that changed much though since you've started? Like what's the biggest change between when you started till now? Because you have 18 years of running a business too. So I mean that's.
Gosh, there's so many things. I would say the accessibility piece is huge. It's a different professional now. I think we went from this place where it was like people really valued their jobs. They thought so highly of their work. They were really giving it everything that they had, almost to the extent where maybe they were taking away from their family or they weren't taking care of themselves. Like it was going too far. So then that wasn't good. And now I kind of feel like we're in a different type of setting where not everybody, obviously, but some professionals are super comfortable with like, it's all about me. And jobs just don't work that way. So it's hard to find that balance between supporting new, younger professionals but helping them learn like, hey, you have a lot of qualities and a lot of really great traits, but now let's just bump it up a little bit and we got to step away from you some, and you have to realize you're a part of something bigger. So, because I think we've had this movement in society where it's like you want to do everything that makes you feel good. Well, when you do that, you're probably.
I know exactly where you're going. So
you do.
I think I think it gets glamorized on media and it gets glamorized all over the place that like you should ask this and demand this and you should not take this less than what you're worth. Well, like, what are you actually worth? Like, and I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but it's like, if you think that you should be getting paid X or getting these benefits or getting that, and you are in your early to mid 20s and you're demanding something that I'm like, someone that's been working there for decades is barely getting or just getting, or there's a level of, I think you should be, it's all relative. Like you should be getting compensated in everything for where you're at and what value you bring. I don't. If you're 25 but you bring more value than someone that's 55, then you should be compensated more. Right. I just look at it as there shouldn't the seniority scale. I think needs to be respected if someone's been there longer because there is a value in the sense that like I know even at my age I don't know everything. So like someone that's 20, 30 years my senior, I would say I can learn from them. They could probably learn some stuff from me, but I don't want to be that like over aggressive kid thinking I know everything and that, a lot of times I might, but then you kind of, as you start to get older, realize like maybe I was wrong back then. Maybe like they were saying something so, again, simplifying things down that I just thought it had to be go, 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 crazy, crazy.
Right. Yep.
But I think on the other scale, when you have someone that's say in their 20s and they're on their first or second or have just bounced around from job to job to job to job, which they don't really have not established a career, and then you go guns a-blazing like you're owed the world. I'm like, you're 25.
Right.
Like,
slow down.
You've been working for 5 years.
Right.
Not at the same place. Like you don't have anything established except this facade that you see on social media that like you are this, like you got to be, you got to stick it to the person and get what you want. I'm like, you haven't earned it. That's the problem. They said, if you've earned that, absolutely. But I said, who's to say you've earned something 4 or 5 years into a business? Right. Like, I've been doing this a long time at the same job, and there's a ton of stuff that I'm like, I just haven't paid my dues yet. Like,
right.
Like
right.
I know that.
But you respect that. You know that.
I know it. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a journey. It's like a grind.
Right.
You just like, if I just woke up tomorrow and be like, I should be getting this, and this. I'm like, I probably should go to, like, I should go back to the drawing boards, because I'm just
Right.
yeah. So what you said is, and do you get that with like kids coming out of school, that they're a little bit more, like forthright in what they want, or a little bit more maybe unrealistic as to like what an early, like, this is your first job out of school, like you're based, I mean, you got a degree, which is great, meaning that you have ability to grow, but you're still 21, 22, 23.
Right. I think unrealistic is a good word, definitely. And then just the other piece of it is, you know, within our business, you have to have your master's degree to be able to provide speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy, special education services. So we have the same credentialing as somebody in a school district. And although our agency is recognized by New York State Department of Education and we have to follow all of their guidelines, we unfortunately don't fall in, aren't part of the New York State retirement system or the healthcare system. So that's a big difference. So we oftentimes are kind of like a stepping stone for people to get experience. And then a lot of people oftentimes move on into elementary schools, which I understand because they're trying to support their families differently. And it's an awesome job, especially because it's so flexible. And a lot of times people don't leave our business because they want to. They leave it because sadly we can't offer what somebody else can. But what we can offer is all the things that you're talking about right now, which is just more of that personal side, which definitely we try to approach. And it's more now, I just have to learn more about the new and upcoming professional. It's just different. It's just different. It's not right or wrong. It's different. And I don't understand a lot of things. Somebody told me today that they were, I had to ask Brady, 'cause a social media
Influencer?
Yes, a social media influencer, and they were making drafts. And I was like, well, you might as well be speaking to me in German. I have no idea.
Making giraffes?
Drafts, like DR, not the animal giraffes, but like DRAFTS.
Drafts of what?
Videos? I don't know.
Okay.
See, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, drafts can be a lot, like draft meaning like a rough draft, like a first, maybe?
Like a TikTok video.
Oh, God. Yeah, well, so...
See, I don't know these things.
Like, so this is, I love marketing and media and social media and all that stuff, but like TikTok, I totally understand the concept behind it, because at the end of the day, because this is actually going to piggyback off what I was going to ask you, because so everything in life for the most part is based on attention. So if you have attention, you therefore can really, you have a lot of power when you have attention. And this goes for everything. This goes for, you know, the president of the United States. This goes to celebrities. This goes to just somebody that might have a well-defined business or whatever. Like
right.
If you have attention and you have some level of notoriety or some level of value. So it's the idea of like, if somebody was to paint, these two guys, I got to post a photo. I haven't posted it yet. These two guys were outside the other day. I rolled up. They were painting the station, the building that we're in.
Okay.
Not the side you were down on, the lost on, but this side. So they were painting the building, and it was incredible, and I loved this. This is awesome. And I was talking to him a little bit, and I was asking him like, "Oh, how much do you sell these for?" And they gave me a number, and I kind of used I didn't say this to them, but like you can use the analogy like those guys that painted something twofold. Number one, there are two local guys that painted it. They're not. I don't know really famous guys right now, but like or gals, but they're not the Michelangelo of
right.
the world right now.
Yep.
So these two who are very gifted are only gonna, let's say they fetch $500 for a piece of art. Well, what happens to someone that gets $500 versus someone that gets, you know, like one piece of art I think just sold for like, I might be wrong in the number, but I think it was over $400 million.
Oh my gosh.
But it was like, yeah.
That got attention.
So the thing was the attention, but when you look at it, what makes that piece of art better than that piece of art? And I said a lot of it is because they've built up some type of value in themselves, like what personal brand, whatever you want to call it. So
right, that makes sense.
So and how many artists were doing art back when Leonardo da Vinci was doing art? Somehow he is he the greatest? Like are all these artists that do stuff now, are they the greatest artists, or they have like this one artist, he's a street artist. I don't know how active he is. His name's I think it's Banksy. Have you ever heard of him?
Mm-mm.
So he does art at night, and he'll go and just do graffiti art on random like buildings.
Okay.
So he'll go to like an alleyway and do a graffiti art and like sign it. And and the thing is, he does it at night, and nobody really knows his identity. So his artwork fetches a lot of money.
Right.
Well, this guy is like, I've seen his artwork. He's better than I am, but like, you probably could find a lot of people that could replicate that very easily.
Right. Yep.
But because he's built up this persona around that, therefore can fetch more money, more value. So that's why I'm thinking, like, when you talk about people on TikTok or doing the drafts, because there's a lot more people that pay attention to TikTok than would pay attention to a billboard in upstate New York.
Right.
So then it's so it might be like, hey, I'm a great billboard dancer in upstate New York. That's probably not like, but like maybe I'm a great street performer on the streets of Plattsburgh, New York. But then someone says, well, I'm a great street performer. I put it on TikTok. Now I can reach millions of people through my phone. So it's a very cheap, easy way to get there. But so yes, you can make a living off of it because you have the attention. That's why ad revenue, and people are like, oh, millions of people watch your videos. Can you promote our stuff? Because we now get in front of a million people that are in our demographic.
Right. That makes sense.
But like we look at them like, that's stupid. They're just doing these goofy dances on camera. But a lot of these people are like multimillionaires because but it's attention.
Yes, that's what it all comes down to.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because you said like we're on the state. We don't get state healthcare, we don't get state insurance, we don't get certain things like that. So then you go back to the idea that people leave because of that. But it's like, but if you really looked at the impact of people, I was thinking about the other day when you have like teachers and scientists, and you have all these people that are progressing the world forward and making impact in the world, versus someone that's doing, like you would argue, the TikTok person's entertainment, escapism for somebody.
Right.
But if you took that person away or their business away, I don't think the world's going to end. Where like certain people are making bigger impacts on people. So it's like, things aren't compensated based on impact. They're compensated based on attention. And that's always like the odd thing in the world, because, I don't know.
I love that. I never looked at it that way. I never really thought about it like that. But yes.
It's very strange, because like you can go, think about like, when you always hear like nurses are underpaid, or, obviously doctors are fairly well paid, but like nurses aren't. But I'm like, when we went to have our kid delivered, like nothing against the delivery people were great, but I said, you spent more time with the nurses than anybody else. And it's like, and they were awesome people. Like they did a great job. But then you look at that as like, they're making a difference, especially when you have a newborn kid and you're talking like someone like me that doesn't really know what they're doing, like between like life and death. And like, that's very important versus someone that's doing goofy dances.
Right.
But the goofy dancer could make,
they get all the attention.
They can make, 20x a year versus what the nurse makes, just because they have a lot more eyeballs on their account. It's very strange.
Is nuts.
It's very strange.
Yeah, when you put it that way, like I never stopped to think about it like that, but yes.
I mean, the internet it's the internet. I mean, the internet, because it connected everybody, it's just a totally different world. That's why, like, I think it goes back to our people like reaching out after hours, or people checking in, or feeling like, why new kids coming out of the workforce or going into the workforce demand something because they saw someone do it in Indiana, and now they think they got it. Like, I'm like, oh god, like, because it went viral, and now this viral person like threw a cake at her boss. I'm like, okay, great, like, but I'm like, that's not really how the world runs.
I know, but it is. It's out there though. It's totally out there. It's nuts.
Was it you give an inch, they take a mile? Like, it's like.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just, and coming off of COVID, like there's a lot of mental health challenges right now, and trying to figure out the line between supporting someone and enabling someone is really difficult. That's really hard.
Or the idea of I'm a very empathetic person, and I'm like, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Like, if you think that you need time off or need this or that, then I'm just going to trust that you think that's what's best for you, and I'm not going to debate you on it.
Right.
Like, but there's also times where, like you said, being sympathetic, or can I just tell you to like cut the crap and like buckle up and like just do your job.
Right.
Because I find that I find that at times that stuff can be a very easy out for people to point to. And then guess what? Because of social societal pressures, if I even remotely think that they're not able to or not warranted that or whatever, then all of a sudden I can be looked at as like this unsympathetic, doesn't care. Like,
yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I'm like, I just want you to get your work done.
Right.
Like,
yes, exactly. Yes. I think that's probably the most challenging piece of owning a business, because I think I'm always trying my best to make sure everybody's okay and that you're pleasing people, and that nobody, of course, is ever paid for the most part what they deserve, truly, especially when you're working with New York State Department of Education. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we have confines with that, obviously. But then the other piece of it is I think I'm always trying to do my best. And one of the hardest things to accept is there's a lot of people that think you're not, because they have a lot of judgment. Like, well, why didn't you do this? Or you should have done this, or why didn't this happen? Or maybe this should have happened. And so that piece, learning to take that constructive criticism and just try to get better at it and filter out, like, okay, what is realistic here that's coming at me?
Yeah. Well, I think that's when like I was telling Jen, who you met, we were going through some stuff, and I was kind of going through, we talked about like prioritizing and like what do we really need to do or important. And the two things I looked at is like, okay, what are the things that I need to either eliminate or cut out of my life for whatever reason. They said I'm basing off of two things. My two main currencies that I'm looking at was time and energy. Like, money's on there a little bit, but for the most part, it was what sucks most of my time, and what just is a mental, just like, ugh. Like, it takes a disproportionate amount of mental energy to perform that task. And then it was which tasks do I really like to perform that would increase my like happiness or increase my or would actually energize me. Like when I was doing it, like podcasts, like I put the podcast down, but I put the podcast down as something that energizes me. That's something I enjoy doing because it's fun. And part of me is like, well, sometimes it takes time because I have stuff going on, but I'm like, you know what? But I never really do the podcast and be like, oh, I got to do podcasts. I actually look forward to it because I'm like, because again, this is odd that my phone's here. It's only because of time. Like, I just want to make sure that I wasn't running late. But I usually have my phone on my desk. Like, so we talk about like cutting out I don't like actually go to my desk to check my phone as we're talking. I just like, no, I don't have it for a few hours and it feels great.
Right.
But so it's like that, I don't know. It's kind of trying to figure out what's the energy sucks. And I find that one of the energy sucks is the idea of trying to, I want to say please everybody, but I think it's trying not to offend people. And I think because everybody's on eggshells about everything. And in my thing, it's like, I don't like conflict as much as I don't think anybody likes conflict. If you do, you're just screwed up. Like, I don't think people actually try to pursue conflict in daily life. And I think the problem is like setting expectations and holding people accountable is I think that a lot of people have just gotten soft and they just like, well, I just can't, that's just too much. I'm like, I'm not asking you to like move mountains here. Like, this is a very basic like role or task that you should be doing. And I'm also at my managing style is like, if I'm telling you to do something and you're a full-grown adult, there's a problem there. Like, I that's what I always go back to. I'm like, do I really have to say that you're not, like, I'm reprimanding you like I'd reprimand my 3-year-old for, like, not doing something partly because she just doesn't know any better. I said, you're an adult, you're older than me or whatever, check whatever box you want. Like, you have all the prerequisites to do this normal, like a normal person. And I still have to tell you to do it. And that part to me is like mentally draining of like, I'm like thinking for other people and trying to like plan for other people. And I'm like, you got to step up. You got to like put some of your own mental energy into something, because that's what I think as we say with business owners or people that like run stuff, we're looking at a million things that half the time people don't even understand. Yes. And then when people are like, oh, you're not doing this and this, I'm like, you're looking at a subset of everything I'm dealing with. And I'm like, you're right. Sorry, I should have done that. But I'm like, if I could just like dump all my crap out of my brain onto you, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Like,
yep. That is said. Yes, that's exactly what it is, right? That's exactly it. Yeah. We're just looking at it through a much bigger lens a lot of the times. And, truthfully, I feel like I want to say this because I don't want to sound like it's all negative. We definitely have challenges running a business now, coming out of COVID, social media, all that kind of stuff impacting things. I think it's challenging for any business owner. I also think it's challenging to be an employee right now because there's so much coming at you if you are working with other people as well, because I don't know how to explain it. It just seems like I
was going to say, like, employee to employee or staff to staff or coworker to coworker, I think they're all the same because, like, same thing. If somebody, like, we'll take COVID, if someone is uptight about COVID and someone doesn't care,
yes,
it's now insensitive if you disagree with the person that cares about it, but the person that doesn't care, like, people can just say, like, I can't believe you don't care about it. I'm like, well, it's a two-way street. It's
exactly.
You can't. I've always looked at it like, I don't care what your thoughts or opinions are, just don't push it on other people.
Yes, I feel this.
Just do your own thing.
Yes,
and be fine
exactly.
with it and be accepting of other people.
Yes.
And I find that is not always a two-way street.
No,
unfortunately.
It's absolutely not. That's probably the biggest challenge and change of owning a business now, because that's the world that we're in. Mm-hmm. That piece, managing that piece and just trying to help everybody feel like, no, I really do care about you a ton and I appreciate you so much, but somehow we have to find the middle ground, which can be that piece is the part that's changed the most and probably what I felt the least prepared for.
Yeah. Well, it's also like little comments that people make where people will make a comment because they think that that's like socially accepted. But I'm like, you're also like right down the line of like, whether it be like, I'll just call it politics. You're on the line of different belief systems, but you making a comment that's definitely pro this side versus this side, then it's like, but you think it's fine to get away with, but someone said the opposite, then you'd be all up in arms that someone said it the opposite of what you just said or disagreed with that. So I'm like, just leave that stuff out.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
You can have your opinion. I value that you have an opinion, and I think you should go watch, consume, do whatever you want for your side. But as soon as you start like telling people they got to do it that way, then I'm like, that's not the right way to do it.
Right.
Well, it's probably like, how do you find it working with children and parents? So what I'm saying with parents is like, you come in as the professional to work with a child. Mom and dad love that child more than anything in life. Do you find that it's hard to, because the kids at the end of the day are kids. They're going to do what you tell them to do. Yep. They're like, they want to listen. They're going to learn. They're especially that age. But like, do you get a lot of parent intervention, or are parents very supportive, or is there always, it's kind of like one bad apple versus a lot of really good parents?
I would say for the most part, I've been doing this for 18 or 20 years. And so I can probably count on one hand the number of negative experiences that I've had, I think, with parents. I think for the most part, once you get past the initial, the child qualifying for services and helping parents walk through that, because that can be very devastating. My husband and I, our first son was born with bilateral club feet. So I feel like I have a different view when it comes to understanding and empathizing parents, whether it's your child has a speech delay or a language delay, or your child, they've got some sort of gross motor delay. I feel like because I can come at that empathetically from a parent's point of view, because I've been through it, I think that definitely helps me. And then I think also what our agency's philosophy is definitely helps get people on board with services and moving forward and things like that. That helps a lot. We've spent a lot of time learning and getting better about what makes people tick, how we walk alongside, how you walk alongside someone instead of, I have more knowledge than you, I've gone to school, so you don't know about this, but I do. You never want to put that out there, but it's out there.
Yeah.
Well,
I look at, like, I remember as a kid, like, you'd go to class and it's funny because Jen, who you met, used to actually work at my old school when I was in school. Oh my goodness, how funny! So like, I didn't know her back then. Like, I probably have saw her multiple times in my life, but just like, I was young, and so wasn't she. So but it was funny when you were a kid and like a kid went to like PT or OT or speech. Like, there was always the negative connotation of like, that kid's just not smart, that kid's dumb, that kid's whatever. And you could feel it amongst the class. And I think part of it was like, okay, you're going to leave and go to speech. You're going to leave and go to PT. And you just thought like, oh, they just like can't hang with the rest of us. I mean, kids are, but as young age, kids can see that two kids are leaving, or kids can see that someone's going. And I think when I was growing up, one of my sisters went to speech, so like it didn't really, and I think maybe it was just kind of like because she's my sister, like don't pick on her, don't like like she's going to speech, like it's not that big of a deal, like she's fine, and like and I think that I never had that issue, and then when you go on now having a child with speech, like you look at it as, I would be lying if I said that it was just like she's great, she's in speech, because there is like a small level, not that she's great, I absolutely love her, but there's like a small level of like like that stinks that she needs to do that kind of stuff. But then I'll be honest, she loves it. And and she makes improvements. And it's so funny because we'll ask her, like, how'd you do? Like, did you like it? Blah, blah, blah. And she's, yeah. And then like, and she kind of goes through and you can start to see her, you could start to see stuff improve. And start, like this past weekend we were down and she was on like this big castle thing. And then she was doing some stuff on like a playground and she was able to do it. And I was like, she wouldn't be able to do that a few months ago, and it was cool to see.
Absolutely.
Like, and you don't really notice why she's doing it, but then you just kind of stop and pause. You're like, wait, she never would have done that. And but I don't think I always look at it like it's a challenge for her because it's new, but she's young. But I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like this gives her an opportunity to like make herself better, like improve, and like really get off to a good start. And I think, how do you find that with children? Because you go primarily to schools, right?
I do. I go to schools and I go to people's homes as well. Usually it's the younger, the kiddos that are 3, 4, and 5. Most of them are in preschools, but then some kids are either at daycare or at home during the day. So I go there too.
How do you find that the kids interact if like you go in with one, because it's you with one kid on the side for the most part, right?
Yeah. Oh, Kaylin, it makes me feel so sad because basically you are this one-on-one play therapist for a child and kids see you've got a bag of toys with you. And usually if you're working in that field, most, I don't really know any therapist who's not super animated with, kids that age. So you're fun and kids gravitate to you. And so they're always saying like, can I come with you? Can I come with you? And I always feel so sad, like, because no, I mean, sometimes you can, but sometimes it depends on the child, like, because it might take away from their session if I bring a friend along.
So you think it's actually worse in the sense they want to be included versus that student feeling left? Like,
yeah, the kid that's being at this level, the kiddo that's being taken from their preschool classroom to go with their special teacher. Yeah, they are like on a pedestal. Like I want to be them. I wish I were totally them for sure. Because they just see it as something fun. They don't see it as, any work or anything like that. So truly, I feel it like that's a piece that makes me feel so sad. And sometimes I'll say like, I'm so sorry. I asked my boss and she said I wasn't allowed to, but I can give you her phone number. Like if you want to call my boss.
To the kids?
Yeah.
Kids are like, yeah, I got my toy phone here. Pretty soon they're going to be whipping out a real phone.
They will actually have one, yeah.
What's her number?
Yeah. But usually that will pacify them or they'll pretend to write it down or something. And there's one room that I go to, a toddler room, that I intentionally build in an extra like 10 to 15 minutes to hang out in their classroom because they're so sweet, all of them, and I just love them. And I feel sad like not interacting with them, you know? Because they don't get it.
Like my daughter at home, like with the other two there, one's always there. Cause like, unless he's napping, he's there. But with the older ones there, for some reason, he's like, wants to be involved. And we're always like, that's Oakland's time. Like my daughter. So I'm like, that's her. This is like, well, no, she's doing it. And there's definitely like feeling left out. Cause like, wait, why does she get, so like, there is, okay. So I just wanted to make sure, cause I was always thinking like, if you go in, sometimes the kid gets pulled out. I didn't know but they're probably at an age where that just, like them being separated, it's not a big deal.
No, they feel special about it.
Yeah, because like I get to go with like whatever they call you, Miss Calkins or Miss Katie or whatever. Miss Katie, yeah, Miss Katie. I get to go to Miss Katie.
Yeah, no, they love it, and truly, 9 times out of 10, there's most of the kids. Can I come? Can I go with you too? Can I? And you do. You feel badly, but I would say definitely at this age, kids see it more as like something that's special.
Yeah.
But we as parents, right? Like we overanalyze it, I think, sometimes, and feel sad about it and worry about it and all that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, the kids off having the best, the time of their life.
Yeah, I think that's something that you realize that kids. I had like one of the things I had a friend kind of related but differently a little bit. He goes, you don't have to do a lot or spend a lot or do a lot of stuff with like young kids because they really just want like to be time. So what he was talking about was like a baseball game. He's something about. I could bring my son to a baseball game, but he goes, honestly, he likes it just well enough. We sit down, like me, like the kid's grandfather, maybe his uncle or whatever, or cousins, and they just sit and watch the same game on a sofa in a TV, but they're all together watching a game. Like he goes, it's the most simple thing, but they just want that. They want that time. They want that attention. So, and of course, as a parent, you're always like, we got to do something fun or special or whatever. And a lot of times, like, we've gotten to the point where it's like, let's just take them to a park. Like, let's go to the playground. Let's go to the school and let them just run around and go on something different. And like for them, it's like an hour and a half, or probably not that long, probably an hour of them just running around, being like, oh, that was awesome. I had a blast today. I got to go on a swing.
Yes.
Even though we have a swing at our house, but you go on it's funny how they describe it. Like, well, we went on the blue playground. Yeah. I'm like, okay. And it's like the blue playground at a school. I'm like, yeah, that's great. And so I'm finding that that's more and more fun of just like little simple things that you can do with kids, but they're just like doing a puzzle. Like, I want to do a puzzle with you. I want to play Uno with you. Like, and it's like, that's all it takes. Like, it's so, they're so like, they're just at that like very, almost like we were talking about, like trying to free up time in your life that's not just like go, which is kids. Because like kids, when they wake up, there's no time.
Right. No.
Like they just wake up. They don't know time. They don't know the concept of it. So they're just like, what am I doing today? I'm just like flowing. I'm doing what I want to do.
Yes.
And it's hard because we're wired. Like we tell them like, hey, we got to eat dinner. And they're like, I'm not hungry. I want to go play. Like my son does, and then 8 o'clock we're supposed to go to bed. It's starving. Like, I'm starving. Well, I've already picked all your food up. I'm not doing 2 pickups of the kitchen. And so you have that fight every night, but then you got to like also step back and say, he probably wasn't hungry. You wanted to play. It was light out. Like, so it's just funny. Like, I don't know.
And finding that. Well, and I think that's probably 2 things. One, when my kids were little, that was the hardest thing about being an early intervention and preschool therapist, because I would think, I just gave all this time and attention to somebody else's child, and now I'm going to go home and do the same thing. And sometimes I'd feel really guilty about that, because it's mentally draining because you're on when you're with kids. Like you don't take a second off, and then given what our philosophy is and how we work with children, I think it tends to stretch you mentally just a little bit more too.
So what would be what's your main philosophy at, like, how you go?
Oh my gosh, Galen, it's so fun, but a lot of people in the North Country don't really know about it. So have you ever heard of the Play Project?
I'm gonna say yes,
but
I don't know what it is.
Okay, no, that's totally cool.
I've heard it from Brady and her, but yes.
Okay, so the Play Project actually was originally designed for children with autism, and it's definitely for the younger population. And basically, the philosophy behind it is when you do what the child loves being with you. And the reason why that phrase was coined is because a lot of times for children with autism, social interaction is one of their most challenging deficits that they might have. And so for parents that are, now that they have this 2.5-year-old and maybe they've had some struggles and they've gotten evaluation and then they find out that their child has autism, it can be something obviously that's very devastating to them, but also a lot of times parents aren't equipped to know, like, I don't know how to interact with my child. And that feels bad for a parent to say that, right? Because they think they're the only ones that feel that way. And the reality is, whether you have a child with autism or not, we oftentimes don't know what we're doing as parents. Like, we're flying by the seat of our pants and just figuring it out as we go along.
I'm glad, like you said, a few years down the road, I still won't know what I'm doing. So it's good.
Exactly. But we're not good as a society at saying, like, hey, buddy, it's totally cool that you have no clue right now. Just be with them. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of what this philosophy is. It's instead of... I want to be careful how I say this. We have an approach. We have lots of different approaches when it comes to children with autism, but a lot of it is what I think I should do. So I'm not necessarily interested. Say you're the child with autism. I don't really care, Galen, that you love to play with wheels on a car. I'm not going to care about that. I have an agenda today, and I'm going to meet this agenda, and this is what I'm going to do. The Play Project is the exact opposite, where I come in and I enter your world, and now you're playing with a car with wheels on it, and I start doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, why in the world would you do that? But the more that you show the child, hey, I'm here with you to spend time with you and hang out with you, that child learns to start interacting with you. And it just builds relationships, really, is what it does. And it's phenomenal. And so I first started learning about this to be a better therapist, to work with children with autism. And then I was like, Wow. This was coined for children with autism, and it's actually pretty much a life lesson. Like, it's with everybody, because it just comes down to relationships. It comes down to time. It comes down to being intentional about the time that you're spending with someone. So you're not thinking about something else. You're only thinking about that person when you're with them. So no matter what child I'm working with and, you know, what their disorder or delay might be, I have that philosophy in the back of my mind. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that's something that you do with every kid?
Well,
or starting to?
Pretty much. And what's really funny is, I say this a lot, is that my preschoolers and my college students have the same needs.
Yeah.
They need someone to spend time with them. They need somebody to just pay attention to them and say, like, how are you doing today?
Adults too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I've said it to my husband before, like, I'm doing the play project on you right now. And
I'm sure he's like, darn it. Like, well, I mean, just you saying that, like, of course, you don't know when you're in the moment, but like when you just said that, it's like the times where if I see my kids just doing something, maybe my son, maybe he's watching a show, or maybe he's doing a puzzle, or maybe he's just playing with a couple cars, and I mean, I'm human. I don't do this all the time, but there's times where, like I said, I'm trying to be more like slow down, pause during the day. So like sometimes I'll just be walking, and I'll be like, doing this, and I'll look over, and like one of my son is just like, my little one is doing something with like play food, and he's moving stuff. Like, but if I just go sit down next to him and grab something and give it to him, then he's like, oh, and he hands me something, and then he's like involved.
Yes.
And I find that I'll have to do that more, because I do it, but it's like it's crazy, because when I do it, no matter which kid I go and see and they're doing something, or maybe one kid's playing a puzzle, I just like lay down next to him, like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm just putting the puzzle together. See, I got this color, and he just explains it to you. And I always feel like I get a lot out of that, and I feel that he, like him, her, whatever, they spike like their like excitement level, because one's like, wow, hey dad, like I want to show you this. And I've never connected the dots on that till now, but I now that you're saying that, I'm like, I can think of a lot of times I have done that, and every single time I've gotten a spike in good feeling, and they've gotten a spike in good feeling, and it's almost like, oh, that there actually is like a direct, like I was inadvertently doing it, and they were directly impacted by what you just said. So that's why you said, like, I'm like, that every kid does it, like
that's exactly it.
Yeah,
and
wow, that makes sense,
right?
Yeah,
and that's why I love it so much. But the kind of mindset shift that we're really working towards right now, and there's a big neurodiversity movement where autistic adults are coming out and they're speaking about how they felt about some of the therapies that they received as a young child. And so when you look at it through this lens, basically what we're saying is, I'm going to build a relationship with you no matter what. And that's really what the bottom line is. That's the black and white with it. I'm going to build a relationship with you no matter what you're doing. I'm still going to build that relationship, because when you do that and you have that relationship with someone, all of a sudden now everything becomes easier. And if you think about, you don't have to name names, obviously, but if you think about your most challenging employee, and maybe your employee that's just you really connect with, it's probably relationship that's separating things. Probably the employee that you might get the most out of and things like that is maybe someone that you have a phenomenal relationship with. And by that, I mean just somebody that you can sit and talk to really easily, and like you just jive, and like things are they're just easy. Someone who's more challenging, you probably have less of a relationship with. And it's the same thing with kids. When our kids are acting up at home, if we take 3 seconds to just connect with them, we can turn things around really, really fast. And that's basically what this philosophy is. And it sounds so simple, but we are part of, it's changing, but we're part of something where if somebody gets diagnosed with autism, they need to be fixed. And so we took a very skill and drill type of philosophy to fix these children. The Play Project says, no, this person doesn't need to be fixed. They need a connection, and here's how we're going to do it. And you get to teach parents how to do that too, that's probably my favorite part, because the parent who maybe hasn't had the child give them that back and forth eye contact and that reciprocal communication like that, if they haven't been able to feel that with their child, then you can teach them how to do it. My life is pretty much complete. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I think it, like I said, like raising, like kids are very, like they're very resilient. They're very adaptive. They're very like I find they just like they have a lot of flow in their life. Like they just flow.
Right.
And I find that adults, a lot of us don't. And then I find that the difficulty a lot of times is trying to meet the flow of a kid, because there's times, and you always fight it, because it's like there's times where you're like, I should be doing this, but then I selfishly do have to take time to myself, because, and that's something that I just call it parental guilt. It's like, because I'm home, I should therefore just completely shut down and be with the kid. But I'm like, there are responsibilities that do sneak in.
Yes.
And and this is not every day, but like there might be a couple times during the week where you just have to say like, hey, listen, like I just need you to go play with your sisters, brothers, go outside, like go see mom, go do something, because I just need an hour, 2 hours, or 10 minutes to do something without interruption. And you have that like fight back and forth, and then like that's, I think what happens is you just start to wake up earlier and go to bed later, because you're trying to like appease them and fit it all in, and it's difficult. But I think trying to, I don't know if there's a perfect way to figure it out, but I do think, like I said, it weighs on parents, I think, more mentally than it actually is affecting the kid.
100%.
Because the kids like don't care. They're like,
right.
they throw a tantrum for 10 minutes and then they're off and doing the next thing.
Right. Yep. Their life has moved on.
And if you come back in an hour and hang out with them, like you said, like even for 15, 20 minutes of just, or even 5 minutes of just very hands-on, then they're like, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, yeah, wait, I was mad at you an hour ago? I don't remember that. Like,
right.
But like in our head, we're like, oh my God, I'm just like, I only saw him for like 20 minutes tonight. But it weighs on us, and they're just like, like my daughter would be like, I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to my brother. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like I'll go to the other side of the house right now. I'm like, no, don't talk to me. I'm like, okay, so maybe it gets different in the future when they don't want to talk to you, but like right now they do. So
so I have 3 teenage boys, and my daughter, she'll be 12 in July, but it doesn't change. It's still all about relationship. It's just now I have to change the dialogue a little bit. I can't really ask WH questions. I have to ask more open-ended questions. And the times I notice when I'm most connected with my boys is when I'm listening and not talking, which is hard to do because sometimes I want to strike up a conversation with them, but you have to read the room, But I would say though, the play project has changed me professionally and personally, because it's really, really made me look at relationships and just...
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
No, just how valuable they are.
So with like a play project with like a teenager being different, that might just be sitting down and watching the game with them. Obviously, if you want to. I mean, obviously, I don't want to watch that show, but like, if you were to sit down and be like, "Oh, this is a great movie," and just like sit down with them and just that could even be enough. Where it's
absolutely. Or if you have a kiddo, one of my sons he just loves Xbox, and my husband just doesn't get it. Like he doesn't understand how he can play so much time on there. But one of the ways to connect with him is just go lay down on his bed while he's playing and ask him questions. And actually my husband is way better at that than I am. But then he loves that now we've connected. And so when you take that philosophy and you use that with children with autism, you just kind of have to change the lens a little bit, because what they love might not be something that seems valuable to us, but it's what they love. And that's why it's so important for us to figure it out. And what I say to parents is, if you have a child with autism and let's say their comfort activity is taking a Matchbox car and just spinning the wheels and watching it, we're going to start there, but we're not staying here. But we're going to start here, and because of that, we're going to make huge gains. But a lot of times what happens is we skip right over that and we try to get to the end goal without realizing that, well, the way that I put it a lot of times to people is it's kind of like, think about a house. You wouldn't put the roof on before you put the foundation and the walls up. You have to, and that's what this is. The relationship piece is the foundation. That's a piece that you're always going to go back to.
Well, I think too, when you try to accomplish stuff, that you have to realize, I think, what was the, it's kind of like people, I heard this, like people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10. It's because you're not patient just to like let things happen. Yes. And I think that when you said like trying to get a kid from step A to Z by jumping them up to M on the first day.
Oh my gosh, you just summed it all up.
Okay, I like great idea, because I'm like, if like you're probably working with these students for, I mean, how many months is like a normal time to work with a student? Could it be a couple years? Could it be just a few months? Is it?
So our goal in the Birth to 5 program is to get children to kindergarten with the least amount of services possible. and it's okay, obviously, if they end up going to kindergarten and still needing services, but that's our goal. So a lot of times kids with just your basic everyday speech sound disorder, that kind of stuff, typically we can discharge them before they get to school. But I've had children on my caseload that using the play project philosophy who are diagnosed with autism suddenly don't qualify for services anymore. So it's a spectrum. You never know. So, and then some kids you think, oh yeah, this child's going to have therapy for 6 months, and then you're 18 months down the road.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
But like if you take even 6 months, like 6 months from start to finish, you can do a lot by taking those like small baby steps.
Yes, that's the piece of it. But in our society where instant gratification is what we go to, so for families, say, who might look something up on the internet and maybe they see, well, if you treat autism this way, we can have your child saying 75 words in 5 months. Well, what is that parent who's never heard mama or dada or I love you or anything like that? What are they going to do? They're going to gravitate to that. And the play project definitely is slow. But what I always tell parents, though, is that it takes a while to build, but it's like this snowball and it just keeps picking up snow and picking up snow and picking up snow. And then all of a sudden you just have this giant snowball and you can't even remember being at that little place anymore.
It's funny you say that because I allude to the snowball effect all the time. Is that what you just said? It's like when you start off, you're rolling a snowflake, then it turns into a little snowball, and then it turns into like the big snowball that you put at the base of a snowman. But it's everything's a rotation, but every rotation is compoundly bigger, exponentially bigger.
Yes.
And I think, like you said, you build the foundation of the one snowflake.
Yes.
And like people want to like rush the roll, or they want to just keep packing extra snow on. And it's like, well, there's only so much bandwidth that this thing can take.
I think we should be motivational speakers. I mean, let's just go out because we just need to just go out and tell us, just preach this to the world. Yeah, this is exactly it.
Well, I just think, it's just like, it's a lot of, but it goes back to like we said, with like 25-year-olds demanding the world at work. And I'm like, you're kid, you just like picked up your snowflake out of school and you're rolling it. Like you got like a minuscule snowball right now, and you're talking to someone that's been rolling a 30-year snowball that's going to be like, get out of my face. Like,
right, exactly.
And the thing is, it's like I think there's a time to be confident, but if you're going on the edge of brash / unrealistic, where you're like overstepping, and it's like, okay, like tone it down. Like, and I think that comes down to this, the patient aspects. Like, I remember getting into my current position, I was 20 years old at the time, and like I didn't know anything. And
when you got into real estate, you were 20? Wow, that's young.
Yeah, it was very young. It was young. And but what happened was, and I didn't know anything at the time, and like really at all. And I would say, but I've been doing it every day for now 12, 13 years, like consistently every day. And now I look at when I was at 20, I almost don't even remember the time because I'm like, I don't even know what I was doing. Like I had my license, but like I don't even know how I survived. Like with just knowledge or knowing what the hell I was doing. I didn't know that. But what happened was I've just been doing the same thing over and over and over and over again at a level. Have you heard the term 10,000 hour rule? Mm-mm. Where if you want to be an expert in anything, just put 10,000 hours towards it and you'll be an expert. So like you're an expert in speech pathology. You've spent 10,000 hours doing speech pathology. You've probably had 10,000 one-on-ones with children. Mm-hmm. And
oh my gosh, that's crazy when you put it that way.
Yeah, so I think it's is it Malcolm Gladwell? So it was someone that coined the theory, but it was like, hey, if you want to be an expert, say at guitar, play 10,000 hours. You will be an expert at guitar. So when I think about some things that, when you think of like your favorite musician or favorite actor or favorite whatever, name someone that has a skill, chances are they've put over 10,000 hours into that skill. It's just at a certain level. So you're like, wow, that magician's really cool. Well, who wants to do 10,000 hours of magic tricks unless you're really into magic? Right. So we see that, like you said, we see the 10,000 hour result, or I go see a concert and see someone that's playing on stage and then realize they've been playing for 30 years nonstop. But I'm seeing them now where I'm like, that's cool. And then if I pick up a guitar and I get frustrated when my fingers start hurting because I'm picking a string, I'm like, this is stupid. I'm like, 30 years ago, the person was doing the same thing, and then they stuck with it.
Right.
So that's why I think when people look at what they want to accomplish, like, you can really accomplish anything. It's just, are you disciplined and patient enough to put the time in? most humans aren't, myself included. Like, I would love to be a professional golfer. I love golf. Am I going to put 10,000 hours to become? I'm like, probably not. Like, I like it, but like when you really, and you're talking like 10,000 of focused, like practical application of it. Not like, hey, I went to work for 8 hours today, but you carved in an hour and a half of YouTube. Like, that doesn't count as, like, your 10,000 hours is actually 10,000 hours of like focused in the trenches kind of stuff.
Right.
So I think that's just what it comes down. But even as a kid, like, you don't need 10,000 hours, but maybe they need 200 hours.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. You never know. And like I said, it's kids surprise me all the time because sometimes I think like this is going to be, we're going to be done in a couple months and then we're literally a year and a half down the road. You just never know. But it's funny though that you say that about the 10,000 hours and just sticking with something, because the Play Project, we sent our entire agency, including our kitchen staff. Everybody went to the Play Project training because that's how important we felt it was. Our office manager did. Everybody went because we wanted everyone to understand and know like what it meant. And it's been very slow to take off. We did that in 2018. It's been really slow to take off in Clinton County, whereas in Texas, that's what they use. That the entire state has adopted that. Ohio, the entire state has adopted that for early intervention.
And when you say slow, you mean at like the state level, or you mean at the local level, or you just
at the
mean
local
like,
level? It's just,
or is this like teachers or parents buying into it?
all of it. It's challenging because we have treated autism a certain way for so long. It's really hard to get people to buy into. Maybe there is a different way, and not to say that way is wrong. Just, hey, could we do this a little bit better?
Well, I think it goes back to like that simplifying the complex. Like when you go from basics, which you've learned, which are probably still applicable and still work, but you're now even simplifying it almost even to a deeper level where you're
right.
like, it's more of like, whether it's like an internal, you talk about like having, you as a human, like working out or, reading the Bible or doing things like that really draw you into yourself to make you better, kind of like looking inward. Like that might be the same thing with this. It's like you're looking inward to that person's world, and their world, someone that's a young child is not exercising and reading the Bible. Like someone at a young age is rolling wheels on a car.
Right.
Like it's their, whatever it is that makes them happy or centered
right.
or whatever. And I think, you're kind of going to the root of it. And I heard this now, I've said it in the podcast before, but like most people in life, if you take a problem and you say that a problem is a tree, most people spend too much time cutting back the leaves than actually going to the root of a problem. So when you look at a problem, like you're looking at it like we're going to whatever is important to that child, but instead we're hitting all this out here, which at the end of the day is not really significant.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? Like you have a root and then the trees, and like you're just sitting there trimming the tree down, but like your actual problem is like the roots in the ground.
Right.
Like if you have like, a shout out to Anna here, but if you have like root rot, your tree's gonna die.
Go to Anna.
I know, because it happened.
She'll fix it.
It's happened to me. So, but if you have root rot, your tree's gonna die. But instead, you're too busy like pulling out the little dead ones around the top because it looks pretty that way. But I'm like, oh no, you should actually change the soil because this thing's dead. So it's kind of that analogy.
That's exactly what it is. Yes. And because I'm birth to 5, that analogy makes sense regardless. But because
you're working with saplings at that point.
There you go. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think I like the idea because like I said, it's going like inward. And I think that's, whether so one of my mentors told me that rest is the basis for all activity. That you need to rest in order to be active. Now, granted,
you're not resting at all now.
I see him and I'm like, yes, that makes sense. I'm going to do it. And then I walk out the door and life hits me and I'm like,
yes.
Oh, okay. But it's that, I think just that like rest, just that quiet, that reflection, that just pause, all this stuff that we as humans really need in life. Because I think that one of the things that we're really just in is just that day to day, just go. Do more. And then it's that, like, you don't have to do more. You just get like, do stuff that you like doing and do stuff that's impactful, but don't just move for the sake of moving.
Right.
Don't be a firefly in like a mason jar, just like flying around, but not actually traveling anywhere. It's like, so I think I like the idea of like going to the root of whatever it is, and that's that kid's world at that point.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Like,
and there's
you might not
value
think so, but
to
that's
that.
kid's. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, not you, but I'm saying like outsiders
Yes.
looking in.
And there's such value to that. But we'll get better about it, definitely. And when I say we, I just mean society. There's definitely a lot more knowledge and information coming out. But, using your tree analogy, it's like anything, right? Like even, so I said to you before we started, you and your wife, you're in the weeds right now because you've got 3 under 4, like your life is nuts. And I totally understand that place. We had 3 under 4 and then we were pregnant again. So
yeah, well, we're gonna be good.
We
We're not
said the
doing
same
that.
thing. We said the same thing, Galen. Don't.
Yeah,
Never say never.
We've taken precautions to make sure that hasn't happened. So that's
Yeah, after my 4th, my husband had a vasectomy and I had my tubes tied in the same week. I'm not even kidding you.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
we didn't go that
Yeah.
extreme, but we're following that path. Yeah.
But if you think about, so when I say the play project changed me personally and professionally, so like if you think about a marriage is like the trunk of the tree is the marriage, right? Mm-hmm. And then like the leaves are your kids and your in-laws and all those other things that come into play. And a lot of times we spend a lot of time with the leaves, right? Mm-hmm. And not with the actual trunk. And so taking that time, just that intentional time to just build a relationship with your wife, even if it's little things, like my husband and I have coffee every morning. We get up at 5:00 because that's the only time our house is quiet.
Yeah. I was up at 4:50, 4:30 today. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yep. Yeah. Yes. It's crazy.
So when you say like the play project, like I think even attributing to, you said you say it to your husband, but like my wife's going back to school right now. So
oh wow.
So we have that going on. Like, yeah,
wow.
we
are really in the weeds.
We just do it. I don't.
Yeah, I know, and that's because that's all you can do, right? That's all you can do.
Well, it's one where I don't like to pause life because of, like, now maybe that's the opposite of what I've been saying this whole time about like resting, but I also think we're in that stage in life where we still have to build in certain regards. Yep. Yes. And we just happen to just kind of dump a lot of things in the pile at the same time. So we always look at it. It's like it's really about 2 more years of just chaoticness, and then we're like, I think we're gonna be, we'll hit like a little bit of a plateau, take a breather, and then hopefully, we'll end up doing something crazy, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, because then new things, like you always think that, but really the reality of it is it's your life.
Well, yeah, and you just and it makes you better. Like it's crazier, but at the end of the day, you come out just like you say, like stronger because of whatever you're doing, or just better equipped to deal with stuff. But the play project, like my wife, she'll talk to me now because this is like a thing that she's doing, and she'll talk to me about her classes or other students or what her teacher said or what some things that she read, and some of the, like, I really try 2 things. I try to ask her how it's going each day, like how's your school going, like how, what are you learning, like what's your paper on, what's, what are you researching, partly because that's like she's invested heavily in it, and I'm more trying to be supportive because I'm taking the classes. Like I'm not learning what she's learning. Right. I mean, I might be understanding more of it based on her, our conversations, but I don't want her to go through, the program on her own. Kind of like, hey, just go do it and you're going to be like shut out from us. Like I'm trying to almost like pull it into our lives as like, hey, let's like just, our kids are too young, but like you and I, we're just aware of like what you're doing and like kind of what you're working towards. And if somebody asks me, I can tell them like what you're doing or why you're doing it and stuff. And
you're being intentional about what's important to her right now.
Correct. And I think that's almost like it's her version of the play of like, she's not spinning a car wheel, but she's researching and taking courses and writing papers. And, one is asking her about it. And 2 is when she just wants to tell me about it, is really trying to just like, okay, no matter what I'm doing, it's kind of like my kids. Like, what do you guys need? And then like, which it's constant, but it's like, okay, what do you guys need? And but it's kind of like her. She'll say to me, okay, so like, no, like I'm gonna stop. Like, tell me about your, like, let me just focus, and you tell me about your thing. And I'm trying to get better at it, but that's something I think from a play thing is I intentionally try to do that for her as I would do something with my kids or read before bed or play puzzles or whatever. Even if they're excited, like my daughter did something the other day and she's like, I did it. Like she was excited. And I was like, awesome. Like, even though it was something like simplistic in her world, it was like, I conquered this thing that I didn't think I could do, or I surprised myself, or I was excited that I ended up pulling it off because like like you deal with, I'm sure like kids are always like have this aha moment like, oh wow, I was able to say that word or whatever.
Right.
Something connects in their mind, but
Yeah.
like you can tell when they're excited about what they just did. Like, or my son who can't talk is like excited that he did something. His hands are moving, his face is smiling, he's giggling, and like you can repeat it because he understands you a little bit. But you can feed off that because like, oh wow, they're excited. That's just like me doing something
it's that connection.
exciting. Yeah, it's no, it's interesting, but it's I like it. I like the philosophy. I think it's simplistic. I think it's like, again, you go back to that the simple thought nature activity that really carries more weight than I think that people think it should.
That's it in a nutshell.
Like it should be more complicated.
That's exactly it. Because it's so simple, people get stressed about it. Like, oh boy, this can't be because this seems too easy, right?
Too good to be true.
Exactly. But but truly, that's what it is. And it's interesting that it's difficult to train ourselves to be so, well, simple is not the right, I don't mean simple like how you would say somebody's simple, but I mean, it's literally just like that.
Yeah. Like I think, again, I was reading this the other day. They said like, simple is beautiful. Like simple is like, just simplistic.
Yes.
Like actually, it's kind of funny. I love the show. Do you watch The Office? Have you ever seen The Office?
A couple times.
Yes. So this will fall flat, but like literally the last line in the entire series. Like I'm not going to spoil alert. Like if you haven't watched The Office yet, like I don't care. But the last line in the series is literally saying something about some like basically like sometimes there's beauty in ordinary things. Like it's just what you think like in that show it was just a generic office. Like people went and sold paper at a normal office that you would see all over the world, but you start getting the character connections and the bonds and the memories and the stories and the even just the little relationships or desk mates. Like you build this tight bond with people. Mm-hmm. So it's like there is beauty in ordinary things, a piece of paper. So same thing. Like I think there's if you really look at it, very simple things can make a massive difference. So
exactly. That is literally it. And you can apply it to anything. Having a simple conversation with your wife just to say like, hey, I'm thinking about you and I care about you, by saying to her like, so what did you learn about today?
Or the 5 a.m. coffee.
Or the 5 a.m. coffee. Yeah. Yes. Yep. That has sustained us. We'll be 20 years in December.
That's great. My wife doesn't drink coffee, but maybe she will after she starts.
Well, maybe she'll have tea and coffee. I mean, that was your combination today.
We at Starbucks. So we made, full disclosure, Katie made coffee. I, probably overly tired, not knowing what I was doing, put my mug down with a tea bag in it, which was great. Put the Keurig, just basically popped it up and popped it down quick. Hit the start, and then I realized when I opened it there was coffee, and then I put two and two together. So I had tea with diluted coffee in it.
Toffee.
I love toffee, so maybe that's it. Had a toffee drink today. Well, Katie, if anybody wants to, we're going to end there, but if anybody wants to find out, work with you guys, reach out to you, how can they do so?
So you can go to AdirondackHelpingHands.net. And we have a fabulous web page.
New web page, new design.
A new web page, new design by the fabulous Anna Hewitt Channel. She is one awesome human.
Little wild.
You know what? We
love her.
No, I adore her. I told my boys, I was like, gentlemen, I just want you to know, if you bring home a girl like her someday, you will literally make my life.
She's I always talk about my daughter being one of one, but Anna's kind of one of one. Like she's a rare. There's no more.
She's a rare breed.
There's no more Prince of Anna. You get one of one, and that's it. So, all right, we're gonna end there. Episode 184, Galen Trombley Show. We're out. Thanks for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. If you want to reach me, you can go on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. The spelling, GaelanTrombley.